that was the previous version of this that was called 10 Women had 10 women in it. And that was an exploration specifically of nudity and sexualization. And we had a cross-section of women across from aged 20 to 65, and from different backgrounds and different ethnicities. And we talked about a lot in that process. And then when I started making this work, yeah, I had a lot of questions around it all. I had a lot of fears around it all.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to feel if I can feel someone in the audience sexualizing me? How am I going to feel if I can feel that gaze? How's that going to be for me? How's that going to be for other people in the audience? So I guess two kind of threads to my answer is, right now in my life, I was like, this is the work I want to make, and I actually don't have any control over that. And that was quite freeing in a way, was to be like, yes, some people will. Like, it's going to happen. And that's an interesting thing in itself. And I had a really great conversation with a friend's partner who was male after he came to see the show last year. And he was really amazingly honest about that. And he was like, wow, it was really difficult, because sometimes I was like, oh my God, you're really beautiful. Fuck, should I be thinking that you're really beautiful? Am I an asshole because I'm thinking that you're beautiful? Maybe I should stop watching. Like, yeah. we had this really interesting conversation about that, and he was really honest and vulnerable about what was going on for him internally, you know, in that process.
I think that's the powerful thing of that work.
Well, I think that's kind of the conclusion I came to, and I was like, actually, if it raises that for people of whatever gender and whatever age, and that process is happening inside, and this is then a space where they can be aware of that, mindful of that, question that, then that in itself is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would love to do this work in 40 years' time.
Yeah.
And it would definitely be a totally different experience for me and for the audience.
And for the audience, yeah.
And I've also written this as a script now with the possibility of passing it over to other performers to see what that might do, to like hand the work over to different performers of different ages and different body types, different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think there's such a fear in that. I think with the older woman or the not so
totally
perfect woman,
it
would be more fearful and it would be received differently.
Yeah,
and
100%.
those are the things that raise in my head. Yeah, those are the questions that were thrown at me when I was younger, and I was not really getting them when I was younger.
Yeah.
And you know, it is an interesting thing, but I did get some feedback like you've probably had, where people were saying, but it really made me think because I was sexualizing you. And the gender stuff, and also I don't think it's just the case of like, you know, I don't want to just, you know, like for example, I'm bisexual and I was sexualizing you, and I'm not looking at it in terms of a gender and sort of men just sexualizing women. I'm looking at it in terms of gender, you know, gazing at you as a very beautiful woman. I'm from another woman looking at another woman. I'm not just looking at it on a gender-based way in that way. I'm just opening it out into how as we as humans can go beyond these things that are so massive in society, and we can't get away from them. It's so hard, and I was accused of that often. I was like, what are you talking about? But now I get them more, and now I'm older, I get them much more, and I get them much more from maybe a race point of view as well, because thankfully our consciousness is more raised about that, and I'm grateful for that. But
it's big stuff.
But wonderful stuff. Thank you, Beth. It was amazing.
Thank you, Anna. We're pretty close to time now. Should we just have one more question? Two more questions.
You've got to go to some men too.
Hello.
Thank you, Bethan, for this evening. Thank you for your
welcome.
team for supporting you and putting it on. And thank you also for not using the whip when you sat in my lane.
I did think about it.
Crossed my mind. I'm just wondering, I thought this was an incredibly powerful bit of work. So how do we make this more accessible to perhaps more impoverished parts of our communities, and to people who don't necessarily have the same access and enablement as we have here this evening?
I don't know, and we're exploring it. So I think as a theatre maker, that is constantly a question, because generally speaking, people who come to the theatre, and that's a big barrier often in the arts. Is how do we make art in a theatre and get beyond the theatre audience, whatever that demographic is. One of the things that we're hoping to do is take the show on tour, and one of my dreams for that is that we take it to venues that are non-arts venues. So we take it to community halls, we take it to places like, if New Pathways have got offices somewhere that have got a room that would be big enough, or if there are organisations that have got like a hall space, that we try and take it into the communities. So we take it out of the Arts Centre and we take it to the bowling club, and we take it to places where, if we get the right funding, we could offer the show for free, like taking away the financial barriers and taking away the many barriers that exist around arts venues. Like, I didn't grow up feeling like I could go to the theatre. I was like, oh, that's what posh people do. Like, that was not a space I ever felt like I belonged until someone invited me into it, Like, there's a lot of different barriers that can stop people coming into those spaces. So I'm not sure, but we're exploring it, and it's definitely something that we want to achieve, and fingers crossed will if we get some more money, which, again, hopefully. Apparently I'm now praying, which is a new
Have we got time for one more?
Yeah, hi Helen.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for revealing yourself in such a raw way and being so on message for so many of us in the room. And my question is, what would you like if you had the power to influence us just with like a few sound bites, what would be the take-home message from all of you as a team, as a creative team? What is the take-home sound bite message?
Going to sound like the epic hippie that I am with this answer, but love. Like that, that is whatever that looks like, this whole process for me, it's like loving myself, being loved, loving the ugly, difficult parts, trying to come into a loving relationship with what's uncomfortable. How do we hold space for lovingly and compassionately understanding, victims and perpetrators? That's the route to change. Like, yeah, for me, mine is love.
I want to hear what other people have to say.
Yeah, so absolutely what Bethan said, and from my place of experience is something about how we co-create and manage to safely inhabit or re-inhabit our body, how we learn to live in our body when we have suffered so much and may have disassociated. So, and we can't do that alone. So, yeah.
And so mine leads on from that, about the witness, the holder, the supporter, which we all will be, as well as potentially the victim or perpetrator. And it's really how Bethan starts the show. It keeps coming back to me like, oh, she's so wise. It keeps coming back to me thinking like, oh, she's so, yeah. Like, so basically, hear me, see me, hold me, and stand by my side.
What about you, Pat?
Yeah.
Well,
You're up, Mike.
Okay. I think maybe the true value of something is, does it pass the so effing what test? But Bethan can't control that. She's done her bit. You've got to do your bit now. So we all talk here and we can sit about how things need to change in society. She can't control that. She's done her bit. You need to take that out somewhere. You need to start talking about sexual violence and abuse and not hide it away somewhere. You can affect change. You can be the so effing what. She's done her bit.
Yeah, I mean, similar, I guess, is about just being that person that listens and holds space for somebody. The same way as we've held space for Bethan today, to hold space for each other. It's the love thing, I guess. Yeah, so I would say that.
I was going to be quite cheeky and say, be sexy, but not too sexy. That's going to
controversial!
I just know that as I'm going to try and get to sleep tonight, that's going to be in my head. I think it comes back to your point about audiences and what have you. And yeah, you can do your audience research and break down by your demographics and think, okay, go to where people are. But I'm just thinking in terms of the use and the purpose of your work now. Okay, you're doing this run at the moment, but what lies ahead? And is this about performing in front of a room of students, or was it about performing in front of a room of policymakers and politicians and what have you? It's difficult to think that far down the line when you're here in the moment now. I think it's worth people considering, certainly.
It's about doing it 40 years.
And just to add on to that, I actually think it's all of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's all of it. Like, take it to the policymakers, take it to the funders somehow, you know, all of it. Take it to the schools, take it to the healthcare system.
Looking at me.
What's
Come
yours?
on, everybody around here and see.
I would like 2 pence worth, please, Carmen.
Oh, what? You want me to do one?
Yeah. Yeah. I want.
Wow. Okay. My take home. To value your voice and your story, yeah, and to put it out there and let people hear it, and to know that your stories are important.
And just because I can, I'm going to add one more in. That we can't just look at the pretty. Like, if we're going to change this shit, we've also got to look at the stuff that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more uncomfortable.
And the dark.
Yeah, more uncomfortable would have been even more.
I
Yeah,
hear you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like the uncomfortable. It's good.
Yay!
Yeah.
Incredible man over here, a massive round of applause. Thank you, Simon. I really
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, guys.